Look what I've got. It's the movie and TV scene sketchbook. Last time we painted the Grand Budapest Hotel. If you've missed it, I'll leave it down below. Well, this time it's spooky season, so we're going to be painting a horror film, and I am so excited. Today we're going to be painting a scene from the Omen. There will be some spoilers and I will leave all of the gruesome details out of it, so if you don't like horror films, don't worry, I'm not going to be telling you anything that you wouldn't want to hear in this. I enjoy watching horror films, but I've hardly seen any because everyone that I've always been around hasn't really wanted to watch horror films, and I don't know if I'm brave enough to watch them by myself, so I've really not seen many. When it came to choosing a horror film to paint for Halloween, I have Disney Plus, that's all I have, and let me tell you, Disney Plus does not have scary films. It's very much catered to a young audience, and it was really difficult to find any kind of horror films. They don't even have a horror section. I was looking for an old classic that I hadn't seen, and this was the only one that really came up that fit that. I feel like horror is also one of those genres where it's really difficult to find a good film. There are so many bad horrors, and a lot of it is also personal preference that it's really difficult to find universally good horrors. So if you've got any suggestions that you like, I would love if you could leave them down below so we can check them out. I feel like word of mouth is the best way to figure out whether a horror is good or not. When it came to this movie, I had no clue what to expect. It's a relatively old film. I knew it was a classic, but I knew nothing about the storyline. It's heavily based around religion, and it's a very slow film, especially compared to recent horrors. Like, this is so slow. And the biggest part is it's not scary. It was actually quite disappointing because I had finally convinced my partner to watch a horror with me. I knew that I wanted to paint one for Halloween in my movie scene sketchbook, and it wasn't scary. It actually had a plot. The plot is based around the child being evil, as they often are, and everyone that gets a bit close gets branded with a mark, the line of death, basically, which is what I'm trying to paint in this scene. It's where two of the characters are looking at a photograph and they can see the line through the photograph. I will say, I don't know if it's because it's of a certain time, but none of the characters are very likable. The women don't really have proper roles, and the man swapped his baby for a random other baby after his wife had just given birth and then passed it off for years as their own child. The man was not great, and he was the main character. I don't know, I feel like a lot of films that are of a certain age just don't really sit right. It's hard to like the characters when they're kind of trash. That might just be me, I don't know. Another thing that was hard to take in with this film is that the child was creepy the entire way through, and then as soon as the nanny came along, the nanny was incredibly stereotypical creepy, and I don't know if that's because there's been so many films since then that have followed this, and this one was actually one of the first. But I feel like with the knowledge that we have nowadays, watching an old film like this, it's just kind of so obvious who the bad people are. So there weren't really twists and turns, it was just so crystal clear. Of the older horror films I want to watch, I also want to watch like The Exorcist, The Shining. I've not seen any of those. And I feel like these older horrors just have crazy plots. Like, I don't know who comes up with this kind of stuff. One thing I did like about this film is that there weren't many jump scares. I don't mind a good jump scare, but I don't like when a film heavily relies on it. Like, the first It was really good, but the second It had so many jump scares that it wasn't actually naturally scary. And I feel like if you're relying heavily on jump scares, the plot isn't actually scary itself. This movie is actually part of a trilogy, and I don't know, I was very keen on watching the rest of them because it did end on a little bit of a cliffhanger. But I have seen their Rotten Tomatoes scores, and yeah, they're not great. They don't get great reviews, but I also feel like a lot of horror films are very low rated, and it really depends on each person and what they like, their personal preference. So I might end up watching the other two. I haven't quite decided yet. One good thing about Disney Plus is that they actually have like the entire trilogy of each thing on there. They don't just have one random film like Netflix does. So I do really like that, the fact that I do actually have the option, the entire trilogy's on there. It's just a shame that there's so few horrors to begin with, but I think they're definitely increasing the number of films they've got on there. So a little bit about this painting now. There were quite a few scenes that I could have chosen for this one, but I decided to go for one that was in a room where they were developing photographs just because the lighting was really interesting. Most of the scene was red and black, which I really loved, and I thought that would be quite a challenge for me. When I painted the Grand Budapest Hotel, it was very much like there was just a pink filter on the scene, so I did like 1 or 2 pink layers and that was kind of enough. But on this scene, the red light is actually in the scene, it's bouncing off everything, so it was really difficult to actually create red. This was definitely a lot harder because I couldn't just glaze with one colour, red was everywhere. One thing I did do for this painting was I added the first layer in the background. It was red and Payne's grey. It was very pretty, had lots of blooms, but it wasn't dark enough, so I had to go over the entire thing, and I was really happy with how the background looked. It looked so pretty. Covering up the background was so sad. I ended up actually leaving a lot of it, and I know it's the wrong value, but the blooms were just so nice I couldn't cover them up. The lighting was really fun but also difficult to work with. It was a challenge. But again, I think the hardest part of this entire thing is the behind the head angle. It's the same angle I did in Queen Charlotte, and I didn't realise until I started this. This is only my second time painting the back of someone's head, and it's really difficult. It just doesn't tend to come up when I paint or draw. I don't tend to do the back of someone's head, and I'm finding this out in these movie scenes. Maybe I'm gonna have to just start sketching the back of people's heads just to try and figure it out, because it's really difficult to try and get right. The ear is at such a weird angle. I found it really difficult. I'm quite happy with the little photograph in the middle. It doesn't look realistic in the slightest. I think he looks kind of cute, but it kind of looks like a photograph, and that's what I wanted. This movie scene, along with all of my other scenes, is now up on my in-print store, so you can get this as a sticker and print if you're interested. I also have quite a lot of other designs up on there, so I'd love if you could check them out. And if you've missed any of my other films or TV shows in this series, I will leave the playlist down below. I've got quite a few films planned, Christmas films, a Disney film, but if you've got any suggestions, anything you'd like to see me paint, just pop it down below and I'll add it to the list. Once I'd corrected the values and added some splatters, I kind of realised I didn't think there was really much more I could do with watercolour. I honestly was really struggling at this point, so I reached for my colour pencils and tried to just add some hair. It's really difficult to add hair with watercolour, so I feel like with colour pencil, being able to add individual strands, it just makes it look a little bit more like hair. I'm not sure if this really saved it, to be honest. I don't know. It added a little bit of different texture, which I liked. I also used a white gel pen a little bit. And as always, I'm using my hairdryer to warm up the tape before removing it. It's how I like to get a nice peel. I definitely need to get some spooky washi tape. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for watching. I really hope you like what I've created. The perspective is really difficult and it's not completely all there, but I think it's still a nice scene to look at. I love the red and black colour theme. I think it's really bold. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss any more in this series. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you on Thursday for the final stretch of Peachtober. Bye bye.